If you're struggling with shyness, social anxiety, self-doubt, low self-esteem, being too nice, the real challenge that you have are not those things. Those things are the symptom to a bigger cause. And a lot of people spend a lot of time, a lot of money trying to fix the symptom without really noticing, understanding, or going at the root of why those patterns exist or came manifested in the first place. And that's a mistake I used to make as well, because I used to struggle a lot with being self-conscious about my height, about my body, of being a nice guy, seeking external validation, self-doubt, low self-esteem. I struggled a lot from my young teenage years all the way to my mid-20s. And I spent a lot of time trying to fix the symptom, trying to address the symptom without really going to the root cause of why these things were there in the first place. And it has everything to do with what I call your self-image, your sense of identity, who you are, your relationship with yourself. Because your life is a reflection of who you are. And most likely what happens is that you went through life and you created that persona, those identification, those beliefs, those emotions, and you decided to adapt to certain situations, to certain upbringing, to certain things in a certain way, and you created that persona, you created those insecurity, you created that shyness, you created those patterns, mostly to keep you safe, because the pattern that we create in life, the coping mechanism, the adaptive pattern that we create are there to protect us. Even if we can't see it, even if it doesn't make sense, it's most likely there to avoid a bigger perceived threat and to fulfill certain needs. Yeah? But what you have to realize is that those patterns exist between that personality, between that identity that you created, but it's not who you really are. And to really understand that is key, because a lot of people are so identified with I am anxious, I am shy, I am this, that they never loosen the grip enough to just observe that this is nothing more than a pattern, it's nothing more than a belief, it's nothing more than a habit that I've created and rehearsed and know so well, but at my core, it is not who I am. And just full knowledge and awareness of that can create a big breakthrough. Because if you keep identifying with the pattern and you keep focusing on this way and I'm that way and I'm that, you will keep on perpetuating that pattern. So the first thing you have to accept is that there is a bigger truth about myself. And I can start to outgrow this old personality. I can start to let go of that feeling of unworthiness and the shame and all those emotions and beliefs that are usually, most often, at the cause of all that shyness, all that unworthiness, all that self-doubt, that niceness, and so on. And when I work with my clients, what we spend most of our time is at the root cause, trying to identify what created that feeling, all those repressed emotions and the belief and the thought from those experiences and so on, to let go of that, but at the same time, to become crystal clear, to have the clarity of knowing who do I want to be instead, how do I want to behave, how do I want to show up, what kind of relationship do I want to have in those social environment and so on, how do I want to express myself. You see, you cannot go and create a vision of the future without the clarity of knowing exactly what you want, because you need a map, you need a reference of knowing, well, this is how I am right now and I'm experiencing this as a problem, it's not fulfilling me, it's no longer who I want to be. Then what do I want instead? Because when you simply do that, you're starting to think beyond the box of what you are. You're starting to think in terms of possibility. Well, if I were confident, and you start to pretend and you start to use your imagination now to role play and to see yourself in those situations where now you're acting a certain way, and you use your imagination to start showing up, to start speaking, to start feeling differently. You see, your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. And if you do that over and over and over and over again, you create that mental reference, that emotional reference, that new emotional imprint, and those new thoughts and those new beliefs. You're starting to create a new mind that allows the possibility of you showing up in a new way. And that along with cleansing those old emotions, those old beliefs, and letting go of those old thoughts and so on, and taking action to show up in a new way, you break down the old identity. and you start to embody and cement that new identity. And before you know it, with action and repetition, you forget who you used to be. Because every new experience that you have, every time you show up and you are in a new way and you overcome the old self, it reinforces the belief and it breaks the old belief even more, and you declare into life and to yourself, this is who I am now. I used to struggle with my height. This is a story I love sharing, right? Because I'm 1.96 meters, and so when I was a teenager, I started growing faster than everybody, and without freaking limit, it seems. So a lot of people were just asking me, why are you so tall, and so on. There was jokes going around, and it used to make me very self-conscious. As you can imagine, I didn't like that attention. So for me, it became I am too tall, negative belief. So what do you do when you're too tall? You try to not be in the center of the attention. You play small, you shrink, which you can imagine how much it increased my self-doubt, my insecurities, and so on. But how did I start to break free from that? You see, when you're tall, and if you're tall, you probably notice that a lot of people tell you, wow, you're so tall, right? They like to state the obvious, or to ask you or to make a comment about it. And in the past, this would make me so embarrassed. I wouldn't know what to say. I would be like, choking on it. And then I decided to be like, you know what? I'm going to start saying, thank you. Every time somebody said that in the elevator or this or there, and you'd be surprised how often this happens, I would start saying, thank you. And people usually laugh and they don't expect that response. But it wasn't about them. It was about me. What I started to do is started to create a perception when this is a compliment. Because I like my height, and if I'm completely in love with my height and my body and I truly accept who I am, I would see this only as a compliment. So I had to retrain my own perception to cement a new belief, a new self-image about my body, which only started to create, the feeling, the body, the belief, and then you no longer hide, and then you're no longer self-conscious about your height and your body and so on. Creates a domino effect, and then you do other things, and over time, I created this new identity where I can do public speaking, where I can show up, where I can do things that before in the past was completely unimaginable for me. So if you're struggling with that shyness, with being too nice, with that low self-esteem and so on, go to the root cause. Find out, where does that shame come from? Where does that unworthiness, where do those beliefs come from? What happened that created this self-image that you have right now? And then become crystal clear to who you want to be instead. How do you want to show up? What kind of relationship you want to have? How do you want to talk to people? All these type of things. Be very clear. Be clear about, what do I want? Don't tell me what you don't want anymore, because now you focus on the negative again. But you have to be very crystal clear about, what do I want instead? And you have to rehearse it, and you have to become so in tune, so familiar with it, that your mind starts to think according to the new way, and then you start to show up, and all of that combined, you will start seeing tremendous transformation in you. And I can tell you from my own personal life and working with hundreds of clients, mostly men, with this challenge, the transformation is possible if you simply do those simple steps. It's not easy, because you have to reinvent yourself, because you have to catch yourself over and over and over again, because often it is so unconscious and so habitual. But if you keep at it, if you give yourself the time, if you take the steps, the transformation is so freaking worth it. And if you need help on your journey, you can book a one-on-one call with me. Down in the description, you'll find a link, and together we can fast pace your progress. All right, guys, I hope this was valuable. It has everything to do with the way you see yourself. Change the way you see yourself, and your whole life will change. Be well, hit that subscribe button.